Hey everyone, my name is Graham Smith. I'm running for the Board of Supervisors here in San Bernardino County's 3rd District. We're going to give it a few minutes just for people to join. In the meantime, just a couple housekeeping rules. Excuse me, whatever platform you're joining from, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, there should be a chat window. Please feel free to put comments through the chat at any point. We want these sessions to be as interactive as possible, and we'll go through and respond to comments as and when we get them. So we'll just give it a few more minutes and then we'll get going. Hey there, my name is Graham Smith. I'm running for the Board of Supervisors here in San Bernardino County's 3rd District. Thank you for joining our live town hall tonight. I've got a presentation to run through, but we want these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So whatever platform you're joining from, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, there's a little chat window. So please drop in questions and comments at any time as we go, and we will pause for whatever questions you've got. It's really important to me that we get all of your questions and concerns addressed because I want you to know exactly who you might be voting for. Excuse me. So I'm my face is a little bit red. We've got a bunch of snow up here in the mountains and I've been shoveling for the last few hours. So it's been a day. So let's kick over to the presentation. I'm getting a word from my campaign manager over here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi. I am Mark. I'm Graham's campaign manager. I'm running things behind the camera. I'll be the one kind of reading the questions to Graham because I can see in the chat. So as Graham mentioned, these sessions work great if they're just as conversational, informal as possible. We do have a presentation, but we only really refer to that if no one has any questions. So
exactly.
Whatever you want to talk about, drop it in the chat. It doesn't matter if you're from Redlands or elsewhere in the district. We're here to answer your questions and concerns. So yeah, don't be shy.
Okay, so kicking over to the presentation, I like to start this off by talking about what a county supervisor actually does, because I'm really conscious this is both not a household name and also not a really sexy position on the ballot. And I'll admit to you, even I didn't really know what a county supervisor did until about a year ago when I started to get really involved in my local community here. So I think of this in four main buckets. Approving the budget. This county has a $10 billion annual budget. That's a lot of money. So the person sitting in this seat has got to have comfort and confidence dealing with figures of that scale. Allocating resources. This county has dozens of departments that sit within it. So one of the jobs of the supervisor is to figure out what those departments need and what resources they require to operate as efficiently and as effectively as possible. approving legislation, a lot of the county's role in legislative power isn't necessarily crafting legislation, but adapting legislation that comes from the federal government or the state of California to make sure it works for everyone here in San Bernardino County. And that's not necessarily an easy job because, as we'll talk about later, San Bernardino County is huge and it's also really varied. So it's really important that we're taking into account concerns of residents across this county and across this district. And last but certainly not least is securing investment. So our county gets its biggest share of funding through reimbursements from the state and the federal government. So the person in the seat needs to know how to lobby for investment, both from the government and also from private industry around the county, to entice them to come here and do business. So that's the kind of high level roles and responsibilities. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am professionally anyway, and what I used to do, and why I think the skill set I have is actually really relevant to this job. So I think of my professional career in really two phases. Most of it was spent working in finance, and then I decided I didn't want to do corporate work forever, and I spent the last 5 years running 2 small businesses. So in my finance career, I worked for 2 big companies. One was called Lehman Brothers, the other was called Ares Management. And really in that job, it was my responsibility to go out, raise money from investors and stakeholders, put that money into a company pot of money or a company fund, and then figure out how to allocate that money across a bunch of different companies. I think of this as being really similar to the role of a supervisor in the sense that what you're doing in the county is allocating resources in the county's budget across a bunch of different departments. So I've really done this job before. And then in my kind of small business career, I started a health and fitness app and then a topical skincare brand. And really through those experiences, I learned just how hard it is to be a business owner, and in particular, how hard it is to be a business owner here in San Bernardino County. And I'll talk later on, but one of my county level priorities is really finding ways to make small business more attractive and easier in San Bernardino County, because as you get out and talk to residents and small business owners around this district, you find it's actually pretty difficult. So coming back to what a county supervisor actually does, approving the budget. So in my finance career, I personally raised and invested about $10 billion across hundreds of different companies. So I've absolutely got the confidence dealing with a budget of the scale of the county. Allocating resources, I just talked about how I think my former career was kind of a perfect training ground for the resource allocation part of this job. Really my specialty is being able to look at all these different county departments, figuring out what makes them work and what they need to work better. And I think we all have this basic understanding that through looking at what we see in the news headlines, this county doesn't operate as efficiently as it possibly can. And I certainly think there are ways to make things better for all of us here. I think the point on approving legislation is, well, a couple points. One, it's a really fast-paced environment and you need to be able to respond and learn stuff quickly. And the other is you need to be able to take feedback from different stakeholders, in this case, different residents across the district, because what works for someone in Redlands will not work for someone in the mountains where I am, will not work for someone in the desert. So you got to be able to talk to everyone across this district and make sure that legislation that's being passed is implemented in a really smart way. And then last but certainly not least is securing investment. So this is the bread and butter of what I used to do. Again, if you spend time reading the headlines here, you see that we have real problems in San Bernardino County in relation to our relationship with the state of California and the federal government. I don't think it's in a really positive place right now. A big focus for me is repairing that relationship. And that's important because we get so much of our budget through reimbursements from the state. I think we need to make sure this relationship is positive and working really, really well. I think it's also important in this role to be able to work with the various industries across this county, because we really need. I mean, I certainly think we need, and I can talk about this later. We need to diversify our economy here. We need to attract more businesses to come to San Bernardino County, and the person sitting in this role needs to know how to do that well. So why don't I pause for just a sec and see if we've got any questions in the chat?
None yet. I just want to remind everybody that there's kind of like a 20 second delay from what you see on the camera, excuse us, to us receiving your messages. So any questions or just it doesn't even have to be a question, any topics that you want to talk about, please just drop it in the chat and we can have kind of an open dialogue like I say, this is how these sessions kind of work best if people participate. So,
and it absolutely does not have to relate to anything we're talking about in the presentation. This is just here to give us a little bit of structure in case we need it. So whatever's on your mind, please let us know, and we want to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely happy just to kind of throw this presentation away and just talk.
Exactly.
That's, we're pretty loose about the format here.
So this session is branded as a Redlands Highland Mentone, so more of an urban focused area. Although admittedly, even in those cities, they're quite different. But one thing that I think is really important to remember for everyone is just how big and how diverse San Bernardino County and District 3 are. So if you didn't know already, San Bernardino is the largest county in the US. It's 20,000 square miles. It's about the size of West Virginia. And District 3, where we all are, is about half the size of San Bernardino County. So it's about 10,000 square miles. It's really diverse as well. So I'm up here in the San Bernardino Mountains. We've got a bunch of varied desert landscapes as well, in addition to cities like Redlands, Highland, Mentone, Loma Linda, Grand Terrace. So we've got a lot going on here. And I think one way that we've struggled historically is we've taken what feels to be a one-size-fits-all approach to management of this district. And I think it's really time we change that, because we gotta acknowledge that residents in Needles do not need or want the same thing as residents in Redlands. So it's really important to me that we're responding to residents in all parts of the district appropriately. And certainly through being a resident of a rural part of San Bernardino County, I know what it feels like when your government isn't there for you. And I want to make sure I'm doing everything I can in this role to make sure we're taking care of absolutely everyone in this county.
So we do have a question. Actually follows on quite nicely from this slide. Just as a reminder, District 3, which is the district we're running in, 9,600 square miles. Graham didn't mention this, but there are 410,000 residents in District 3, which segues nicely into the question from David, who says, how large of a team does the supervisor head up?
I mean, you're really responsible for, you're really supervising all of the various county departments. So, if you read through the county's budget, you've got dozens of various departments in here. In terms of your kind of personal team, I actually couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but it's a lot of people.
I'm gonna drop a link into the chat, which is an org chart that the county prepared and puts on their website.
Yeah, that's a good one to look at.
Just to kind of give you a reference. So quite rightly, in this diagram, if you can't get access to it, residents of the district sit at the top. They are ultimately in charge. That's the way things are supposed to go. Then the Board of Supervisors is sort of the highest level of the, I don't know what you call it exactly, the executive branch of the county government, I guess.
Yeah.
And then various departments kind of sit under that. So I'm just going to paste that in again, just in case it didn't work. I got an error message there, but yeah, actually I don't know how many county staff there are. I'll find out.
Good question. I mean, the answer is a lot, and I think the important point here is, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, you don't necessarily need to have specialist knowledge in each one of these county departments, because I think it's impossible to be a specialist in dozens and dozens of things. And that's why I think the experience that I bring to the table in terms of being I was what was called a generalist, which meant I looked at businesses in all different industries and sectors. I tried to make a list a while ago, and I got to over 40, and I stopped counting, which means I've got a little bit of experience in a lot of different areas. And really the core skill set of my last job was getting something new across my desk. It could be an industry or something I had no idea about, having a few days or a few weeks to really learn about it, become a total expert, and then figure out what that business needed to make it work better. And that's really the way I see the role of the supervisor if they're doing their job well. It's how can we take our $10 billion pot of tax money and spend it as efficiently and as effectively as possible to make sure we're getting the most for all of us. And I've certainly spent a lot of time reading through the county's budget, and I've seen a lot of areas that I would consider to be wasteful or overspending. And I don't even think this is a matter of raising taxes for anyone. I think it's a matter of just doing a better job with what we got.
We have a question from Lori who says, "What is your opinion on the TOT?" I know you have lots of opinions
I
on
have
the TOT.
strong opinions on this. So
Let's get into it.
okay, so if I'm curious to know what part of the district you are joining from. So for anyone who doesn't know, TOT means transient occupancy tax, and it's really the tax charged for owners of short-term rental properties. And the reason I ask where you are is San Bernardino County only allows short-term rental properties in a couple of areas. They allow them here in the mountains and in some of the desert areas of the district. And there's been a lot of turmoil around this topic recently, really having to do with the fact that there's kind of a widespread view and a lot of anecdotal evidence to suggest that short-term rentals are having an impact on the availability of affordable long-term rental housing. I mean, even in our mountain communities, we have heard plenty of stories of people who can't afford to live on the mountain anymore because they can't find rental properties. They are commuting up to work in a restaurant or a service job from down the hill. So the county spent months and months, spent a bunch of money putting out a report which basically said that there wasn't a problem. Actually, if you have another 10 minutes later on tonight or another day, I have a whole deep dive YouTube video where I go through the county's STR report. And really the conclusion of that is the conclusion they came to wasn't necessarily correct because they didn't have all of the data. So I think there are a few things that we should be doing as a county about this because a lot of residents are understandably concerned and upset. So with the TOT tax in particular, one thing I've been saying for months and months is I'm a real fan of the revenue from STRs, so both the TOT tax and the permit fees or the permit and license fees being reinvested into the communities that have those STRs. Because right now what happens is the money from those STRs goes in the county's general fund, which is basically a giant pot, and then it can get allocated to wherever the county wants. Because STRs they're both good and bad, right? They're good in the sense they bring tourists to a tourist destination, but they also cost the county money in terms of if you have disrespectful guests, it might be more code enforcement calls, it might be more sheriff's department calls. So it does cost something to maintain this whole infrastructure. So I'm a real big fan of taking the revenue from STRs and reinvesting it back into the local communities. And back to that point of the county wasting money on consultants and reports which don't necessarily say anything. One thing, if you read through this county budget, that they say is they're spending, I want to say $3 million on a set of consultants to study what they should do with the TOT tax. Should they reinvest it back into communities or should it stay in the county's general fund? I'm a big fan of just saying cut the spend on that report. Let's just go ahead and invest the TOT money back into these communities.
Wait, they're spending how much on the report?
I think it's $3 million.
On the report,
Yeah.
To figure out what to do with
Yeah. Don't 100% quote me on that, but I'm almost positive I've read that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lori says she lives in Redlands and part-time in Big Bear. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There we go.
yeah, if you're in Big Bear, Lori, I hope you're doing okay with the snow. It's pretty, but it's dangerous. So
Spent a good, 4 or 5 hours outside just digging a giant trench down our front yard and driveway just so we
Yeah.
could get out. So it's a lot.
yeah.
I think the other.
Oh, sorry. Go on.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, when this topic comes up, I feel like a lot of STR owners. It's very easy for these discussions sometimes to sort of categorize all STR owners in the same bucket, but that is very much not the case. There are some very respectful, proper STR owners, and then there are some who are not. So
Yeah. And
I just want to make it clear that there is a distinction there, and when we talk about these kind of things, we're not just lumping everyone in together.
No, 100%. And so if you, as for instance, are a full-time resident in Redlands, you own a property in Big Bear and you rent it out as an STR, you are one of the people that I would consider to be most likely one of the good ones. What we've found talking to residents, talking to neighbors, talking to STR owners is most oftentimes the best ones are the ones that are owned by someone who's got a real connection to the community. What tend to be the worst ones in the sense that you might have guests that are disrespectful and an owner who doesn't know their neighbors or who's totally checked out, those tend to be the ones where the owner is either a corporation or an individual that lives well away from the county. So in terms of other fundamental views I've got on short-term rental properties, I am a fan of figuring out a per neighborhood cap. I think that cap has to be really different for each neighborhood, because we've talked to residents in Big Bear, for instance, who say, some parts of Big Bear really rely on the short-term rentals for things like the ski resorts. And I think if you have a neighborhood where it's really just an STR neighborhood, that cap can be higher. But then if you have mostly a residential neighborhood where residents are really complaining, then we should think about a sensible cap that works for each neighborhood. And I think the key here is to having discussions with members of the community and figuring out what they want. I would much rather be doing that than spending a bunch of money on consultants just to prove that there's not a problem, even though we know there fundamentally is something we need to do. All right, any other questions or comments?
So Laurie says, so what would you do to push for the TOT to be distributed where it is earned? And what do you feel about the cap on STRs? Now, before we get into this, I just want to let everyone know there are mechanisms in place within the county already for funds to be kept in the region where they are. So each of the supervisors has a discretionary fund that they're allowed to use for just their own district. Not all of the funds that the county generates gets allocated to a general fund. So it is not a mechanism that is totally unknown to the county. But yes, and also the second part of the question, what do you feel about the cap on STR? So take it away.
Yeah. So on the mechanism, I think we need to figure out how exactly that's going to work. But high level, what I think we can do is say, draw a radius around each of the main areas that has STRs. So I think Big Bear would be one. When we get to our side of the mountain community, so I'm in a little town called Sky Forest. If anyone's heard of that, I think it might be too small for Sky Forest to be its own area, but maybe we look at the general Lake Arrowhead area as a region, Crestline, etc. Again, I think this comes down to input from residents, because I'm certainly conscious of the fact that when we're talking about things like a cap, in local communities, you can tend to have really different communities not too far away from one another. And Big Bear does feel like one of those places. So you've got areas that have a lot of short-term rental properties, vacation condos, that kind of thing, close to the ski resorts, for instance. Feels like you should probably intrinsically have a higher cap there. But then if you're in a mostly residential neighborhood where I am, for instance, it seems like a lower cap would probably be appropriate. But I think the fundamental thing I always want to come back to on this is this comes down to discussions between the county and residents. And one thing I'm a huge proponent of is expanding the network of municipal advisory committees across the district. So if you don't know what those are, these are local groups they should be formed with active residents in the community, and really they're meant to be a conduit between the local community and county government. What we've seen is the Board of Supervisors has dissolved some MACs that have been historically in existence around the district, which I think is kind of crazy because it's really important that we're getting input from everyone in such a big and varied area. So a huge priority for me is reestablishing and expanding this network of MACs to make sure we're getting accurate input from people in local neighborhoods. And then to the point Mark made in terms of how you actually keep the TOT tax in an area, from my perspective, this is just an accounting exercise because we know where STR properties are located, we know what they're bringing in terms of TOT tax. Then it's a matter of drawing that radius around an area and saying, okay, here's the fund for Big Bear, here's the fund for Crestline, here's the fund for Lake Arrowhead, as a for instance. So again, there's plenty of detail to work through in that, of course, but high level, that's kind of how I think about it.
Cool.
And by the way, if you have questions on any of that or anything that's not clear, please let us know, because I want to make sure we're getting to exactly the meat of your question.
Yeah, it's always interesting when we have events like this, Some people want an extremely detailed response, which we are more than happy to give. We have a lot of thoughts and a lot of facts and information to give to people, but some people don't want that much detail. So we kind of trickle down from, here's a high level response. Do you need more? Here's a mid-level response. Do you need more? Here's a really detailed response. We don't want to scare people away, but please, if that doesn't answer your question or any of these questions, just keep probing, because like
we're here to answer your questions. Totally. That's the whole point of this session. And
absolutely.
I mean, one thing I want you to know is I'm not a politician. I have a lot of political experience through my last job, which I think puts me in a good position for a role like this. But I am not a regular old politician, and I'm trying to answer questions as meaningfully as I possibly can. And if you're not getting the answer you want, please push me, because I'll tell you if I don't know. But if it's something I have a view on, I want you to know exactly what my view is. And if it's something I don't know, I want you to know at least how I'm going to think about it and how I'm going to get to the answer eventually.
Well, and also we want to hear other people's opinions. So, this is not a dictatorship. The supervisor does not just get to decide.
Sometimes it feels like we live in one in certain aspects, but
sometimes
we're trying to change that.
There are a lot of topics where, you kind of hit a ceiling with what you can decide upon before you actually have the job, right? A lot of these things do take more research. Maybe not a $3 million research report, but the more stakeholders to get involved in a lot of these decisions. So there is a limit as to how much information we can provide in these kind of things. But
exactly.
Okay, so Joan has a question. And a very important one. She says, does the supervisor have any influence on the insurance, fire and property companies that deny mountain customers coverage?
I'm glad you asked that. You're not the only person to have asked this question. And as you can imagine, this is a really important topic for us personally, because we live in a wildfire area, and we are impacted by this personally as well. So it's really important to me. So the county doesn't necessarily have direct responsibility or input with fire insurance or something like California Fair Plan. But one thing I'm really focused on, and this goes beyond just fire insurance, is one thing the county can do, and I think the county can do a better job of, is facilitating relationships between residents and entities like the state of California or the federal government. Because we as individuals, we don't necessarily have the relationships we need to go to the state of California and say, hey, our insurance system here is really messed up, we need some help, what can we do about it? By the way, one thing that I propose in the STR video I mentioned is, what if we take all this TOT money and use it somehow to improve the insurance situation for all of us here. Whether that would be paying premiums to the state of California to reduce some of the fees for us residents. It's probably not going to be enough to solve the problem, but it might have some kind of impact. Like these are the things that I at least want to think about and have a discussion about. And I'm not going to say I have all the answers right here today, but one thing I think we need to do as a county is start thinking outside the box a little bit more and saying, hey, maybe we can take this TOT money, set up some kind of county insurance fund, and at least use that as a way to reduce the premiums here for all of us. So again, I don't have numbers in front of me, so I can't tell you if that's going to work or exactly what kind of input or what kind of impact it would have, rather. But that's the kind of thing I really want to look at.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the point to make that, like, even though this isn't the direct responsibility of the county, supervisors and the county in general should really be an advocate for people. So you don't end up with, David and Goliath situations where individual residents, I mean, we've heard stories where individual residents are having to call the California Insurance Department,
It's insanity from my perspective. And by the way, for anyone joining from Redlands, as for instance, it's not like this is just an in the middle of the mountains problem. We've talked to residents in Yucaipa who have the exact same issue. So this is a really widespread problem. I know this is a widespread problem across the state of California, but particularly when you have a district like ours where you have a lot of rural areas, a lot of forested areas, it's really important that we as a county are working with the state of California to make sure that we're doing the very best that we possibly can. Because I don't know exactly what the output of all this looks like, but the impression that I get is that we're not necessarily doing the best job we possibly can right now.
Yeah.
So I think a big part of this is just working collaboratively with state and federal agencies to come up with some kind of solution that makes life at least a bit better for people.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, I know it's a pretty dire situation to begin with, but it might be worth just spending like 10 seconds talking about the knock-on effect of people not being able to get insurance, because a lot of people come at this from the perspective of a homeowner, which is obviously a problem, but you want to buy a house, you want to start a business, you need insurance. You know, there's so many things that you need insurance for that aren't just living in a house. So there's going to be a huge knock-on impact, and it sort of behooves everybody involved in, you know, residential, you know, homeowners associations and mortgage brokers and realtors and, you know, chambers of commerce, you know, anyone involved in any kind of business that has physical property, this is a problem for. So it definitely seems like something that the county should be actively involved in with a whole bunch of different agencies, to be honest.
Yeah, because let's go back to the conversation we were having a second ago around STRs and the impact on the availability of affordable rental housing.
There you go. Yeah.
I think we're really in a situation now where residents they're already priced out, but you know, are we going to shortly be in a position where even more people are priced out because fire insurance is so expensive? So, you know, either you might not be able to buy a house, you might have to move away because you can't afford your insurance anymore, or that house that was going to be available for long-term rental on some kind of affordable basis is no longer affordable because the insurance costs so much. So I think we also have to remember that none of these things are in a silo. They're all linked together. So, you know, you can credibly think about the impact that something like fire insurance has on the availability of affordable housing and homelessness. Like, I think until we start thinking about these things holistically, it's going to be a real problem for people.
Laurie, if you're still on the stream and you're comfortable talking about it, be interested to hear what your experience has been like getting insurance down in Redlands and Big Bear. You asked questions about STRs, so correct me if I'm assuming you might be an STR owner. If that's the case, just curious to see what your experience has been as an STR owner getting fire and property insurance.
And also your experience as an STR owner dealing with the county, because again, we hear really, really mixed reports on this topic. Some people say it's easy, some people say it's a real pain. So just keen to get input and feedback on how life is for you.
Yeah.
Because again, even though we've been talking about the impact of STRs, I'm not against them at all. I think they're really important, and I think the most important thing we can do as a county is make sure this apparatus is just working well and working efficiently.
Yeah, I mean, we all rely, especially in the unincorporated areas of District 3, we all rely on tourism. And, you know, there isn't enough accommodation in hotels and you know, normal B&Bs. So we do need STRs, absolutely.
100%.
Also, just curious, we don't want to talk about insurance forever because it's a pretty depressing topic. But if anyone has any thoughts on the California Fair Plan, if anyone's had to sort of fall back to that as a safety net, we've heard a lot of people's opinions. We're always just trying to gather more information because, I mean, to be fair, all the opinions on it seem to be pretty unanimous, but just curious to hear what everyone today has, if anyone today has had any experience with that.
Right. Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
You can
why don't we talk for a second about some countywide priorities, because I'm conscious we've been talking about some specific issues, and I really want to reassure people, even though I live in a rural part of San Bernardino County, this is not the only thing I care about. There are a lot of really big picture county level priorities that I've got. And it's certainly not just these four, but I think these are a good place to get us started. So the first one, this is really important for me, and this is something that I think I can credibly deliver as a candidate that most others can't, is financial responsibility. So I'm sure you know, if you follow the headlines in this county, it's hard to go a couple weeks here without seeing headlines around alleged financial misconduct, corruption. I mean, last year we had to repay the federal government $4 or $5 million of homelessness funding because it wasn't allocated properly. Just the other week, the county got sued by the state of California again over bungled homeless projects and homeless, affordable housing funding. And I really think this has to stop. And I think the thing I can credibly bring to the table here is, having worked for such a long time in finance, knowing what kind of things to look for in this county budget that stick out as a red flag or an aberration. This is something that I've been trained to do for a long time, and I don't think anyone can credibly bring that to the table. So I think San Bernardino County has had a long history with these issues. I really think it's time to start turning the corner and turn a new leaf here, and that's what I'm here to do. Our economy as San Bernardino is really heavily focused today on transport and logistics, and if you're joining from Redlands, you will be very conscious of this issue. There are a lot of things to unpack with transport and logistics and warehouses. I mean, they have delivered some economic growth to the county. Again, if you've got some time, I've got a whole deep dive video on just this topic, where I talk about, there's nothing intrinsically evil about warehouses, but the problem is we built so many of them. We built them right next to neighborhoods, to schools, to churches. And because they're in neighborhoods, we're getting all the trucks, we're getting all the NOx emissions from the trucks. If you didn't know, San Bernardino County has the worst air quality in the entire country. So there are some edits I think we need to make to this sector to make it a bit more robust and a bit more reliable for us. And one thing I'm really focused on here is, right now transport and logistics is by far and away the single largest employment sector in San Bernardino County, and it employs round about 10% of the population here, which is it's a huge number. And the problem that brings is, one, because we've got so much reliance on one particular industry. If that industry takes a dive, then economically we're all going to be challenged because our county won't be earning as much tax revenue. And the other part of this is these jobs are first in line to get replaced by robots and automated technology. So I also want us to think about a scenario where in the next 5 years, maybe half of that total workforce has been put out of work because Amazon has just decided they're using robots instead of people. So then, in addition to maybe that scenario where we're not earning as much tax revenue as a government, we might be paying out a ton in terms of unemployment benefits. And that's going to be a big problem for all of us. So the thing I'm focused on here is finding other industries to come to San Bernardino and set up shop and do business. And I tend to think about this in two different levels. There's the bigger size industries, and then there's the small business. On the big size ones, one thing I really want to investigate at least is a big investment in renewable energy here, because I'm certainly a believer that I think we all know that our demand for fossil fuels as a society is going to peak at some point, but our demand for energy won't. And we've got a good climate for it here in San Bernardino County, and we've got a lot of space that's been disturbed already. I think that's the key topic, is investing in renewable energy on land that's been disturbed. So warehouse roofs are a great example of that, by the way. And one of the reasons I'm so focused on at least looking at this is these are skilled jobs. They're oftentimes union jobs and not in line to get replaced with robots and technology anytime soon. So plenty more ideas, but I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I just want to just for people to noodle on with regards to diversifying the economy in warehouses. There's a couple of points we didn't mention, which is that we are not the only county trying to attract the warehouse industry. I saw an article the other day. I can't remember. I think maybe it was the LA Times, but Kern County, which is I want to say it's north of us, right?
Yes.
Yeah. They are making a real big push to attract the warehouse industry to them. And unfortunately, well, depends how you look at it, but unfortunately what that ends up with, if you have two counties competing for the attention of the warehouse industry, what you can end up with, if one of those parties is desperate enough, is a race to the bottom in terms of who will give up the most in terms of tax breaks to these operators. So we could end up in a position where we don't get a lot of tax revenue from the warehouses. The jobs that we have are pretty low wage, pretty low skill, and could be in line to get replaced pretty soon. So we didn't get the jobs, we didn't get the tax money, but we do get the disturbance of potentially, pristine, conserved land.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen, but it's an option. And if we don't kind of set some guardrails for ourselves, then we can very easily race to the bottom.
And my personal view is that this is already happening. So if you're in Redlands and you drive down San Bernardino Avenue Boulevard, where you've got all the warehouses in Redlands, if you drive down the 210 and off the side of the road in Fontana, you see a bunch of empty ones. So off the 210, you have these warehouses that say your company name goes here. And right now what we've got is property developers building warehouses almost for the sake of building warehouses. We don't even have tenants for them. So I think this is a real problem brewing, and I think it's something we should all be talking about. And it's really interesting because when you get out to more rural parts of the district, whether it's up here in the mountains or in the desert, most people have no idea about this problem, and they don't really care too much about it. But because of that countywide impact, because of the impact to our tax revenue, to what we're going to be paying out to people in terms of unemployment benefits, to figuring out what to do with a huge segment of the workforce that might be out of work, this is a problem we all need to be concerned about, and I think it's going to take some strategic thought at the Board of Supervisors level to figure it out.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a couple more comments from Laurie. She says, no, we're not STR owners, but we are surrounded by 15 STRs in Big Bear City. And that she's very involved in getting regulations.
Got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
like we said, they are necessary, but we do need some guardrails because we
Yeah.
could end up with like completely decimated communities who would just completely, just, it's a commercial zone at that point, right? If you
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I talk about is, you have this push and pull between people who say, well, this is my private property, I can do whatever I want, and on a fundamental level, there's certainly some logic to that argument, but we also have a concept of zoning in most of this country, and certainly in this county, where we've got residential, commercial, rural, all kinds of different zoning requirements. And I think if all of a sudden all of the houses in a residential neighborhood are effectively becoming hotels, then we're not really respecting the zoning requirement of that neighborhood, and we're certainly not respecting the neighbors that actually live there.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot with residents around STRs, so this is certainly something I'd love to chat about more.
Yeah. She also says that luckily they have State Farm, have had it for about 40 years and have had no problems. Good for you, Laurie. I'm knocking on wood that it stays that way.
We have State Farm here, and it doubled last year.
Yeah.
So we're happy we have insurance, but it's gone up in cost. So it's a big deal.
Okay, so we have a question or a comment from Amanda who says, misappropriation of funds for homeless and affordable housing is so frustrating. I'm glad that you recognize red flags and want responsible allocating for funds. Excuse me, I'm just going to add on her question, which is, I'm interested in building affordable housing in San Bernardino County. She says she thinks you would appreciate the concept, providing housing for the community, but also jobs, and she looks forward to showing us some of her business plans.
I'm super interested in that, and you are the type of person that I want to get your input from and work with, because I agree. I think we need to do a much better job of this. And one of the things I always talk about is I think we have a real opportunity in San Bernardino County to really make a difference, because we have a big unhoused situation here, but it's not nearly as bad as it is as for instance the city or the county of Los Angeles. So I think with some smart thinkers, some smart investment, I actually think we can make a difference here. And when I see lawsuits in the headlines around misappropriation of homelessness funding, I just get really, really aggravated, because we just need to be doing a better job.
Yeah. I know we can talk more about this if this is a topic that people want to go more into, but plenty of examples of misappropriation of homeless and affordable housing funds in this county, literally in the headlines, like 3 weeks ago, with the Shangri-La construction company.
Yep.
So yeah, if you want to keep talking about that, let us know. Amanda also comments that San Diego has been destroyed by STRs. That is a real shame. I mean, again, I think if you're a responsible STR owner and you want to make a little bit of extra income, but you have a connection to the community and you want your STR to be additive to that community, then that's great. There's totally no problem with that. But it does really become a problem when you have so many that there's just no character to the town anymore. You have homes owned by, this is kind of relevant for us as a campaign, that you have a whole bunch of homes owned by people who live far away and don't even vote in this district. Yeah. So they don't really influence much in the area, and they're sort of, reaping the benefit and not really giving anything back. And, it's such a shame, because you can end up totally destroying a really great community. Communities are made by the people in them.
Correct.
And everything kind of falls off the back of that, right? Yeah. It's like local businesses and community groups and just community support. Crikey, during the snowstorm last year, how important was our community to us? It was like the absolute lifeline to a lot of people, like literally.
It was the only thing we had. Just so everyone knows, a huge part of the reason that I decided to run for this office is last year when we all got buried in the snow up here in the mountains, The county wasn't doing anything for us. They weren't even communicating with us or saying anything. To get the attention of the Board of Supervisors, it took 200 residents. We used Instagram as our medium at that point, but 200 residents posting the same thing at the same time saying, hey, we need help. What can you do about it? I really don't think it should ever get to that stage.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the reason that I actually thought about doing this to begin with.
Yeah.
Just one other point I want to make on STRs is, you talk about San Diego being a real problem. There are some examples of counties and cities that have really managed this issue well. So one instance I talk to a lot is Riverside County and the city of Palm Springs. I sat down with one of the Palm Springs City Council members a couple months ago and was talking to her about how they've managed their STR situation. And they have implemented caps, restrictions on corporate ownership, as a for instance. They've got pretty stringent code enforcement rules. And in general, it seems to be working pretty well. So I'm certainly a fan of practical examples and practical advice, because that conversation didn't cost anything. And what our county has done is spent, I don't know, $1-2 million on a set of consultants to produce a report that had no conclusions at all. So I think we need to be looking to examples of places that have done things better than us and using those as inspiration.
Yeah. We do have another question about STRs, but I'm just going to get to Joan's question first, which is, will you have a local office on the mountain if you win? Will you be more accessible than heretofore supervisors?
A huge part of this for me is making sure that I'm a lot more available and I'm a lot more visible than either any of my predecessors or anyone on the board right now. So one thing I talk about a lot is I really want to bring an unparalleled level of accountability and trust to this role, and a huge part of that is having open dialogue and open conversations with residents.
Sort of a good time to maybe go through point 4 on the slide that's in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's literally exactly what we're about to talk about. There are a couple ways I think we can do this better. So I touched on the MAC committees already. We do have a couple of them here in the mountain regions. If I'm being openly critical about them, I think they tend to be fairly politically charged, because the MAC representatives are handpicked by the Board of Supervisors. And I don't think they're necessarily reflective of the view that we as residents have, up here in the mountain communities. And the problem's even worse in the desert, because they don't even have a MAC committee anymore. So whether or not we can have a full-time office, I think it's important we really start to reestablish these MAC committees, make sure that we're making time to both physically get around the district, and also I really want to continue sessions like this, because I think as residents we don't have a lot of visibility into what the Board of Supervisors is doing unless we go to a Board of Supervisors meeting. And again, if I'm being critical of the board, of the meetings I've attended, most of the decisions are pre-decided before it even comes up to a vote, and everything tends to be voted on unanimously. There's not a whole lot of discussion. So even if you go to a Board of Supervisors meeting, there's not a whole lot of transparency in terms of why people are voting the way they are or exactly what they think, and that's something I really want to change here.
It's very rare to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting, make a point, because you are allowed to talk, right? They do have a public kind of, speaking section, whatever. But you do kind of get the impression that they're just kind of sitting there, like letting it wash over them, and then it's like, all right, now on to business. We've done that part. I mean, I've seen it happen once or twice, but the times that it did happen, oh my goodness, it was a very well coordinated effort by community members who banded together as a group. They had training sessions before the board meeting to practice what they were going to say and in what order. And they did manage to make an impact, but good grief, that was a lot of effort to make a fairly rational point, I thought. That, if they hadn't have done that, they, probably wouldn't have got the result that they wanted.
Exactly. So long-winded answer to your question, but I hope that gets to the point you were trying to make, which is, I really want to be a lot more available than anyone has before, and I want people to feel like they're really in the loop and they have a connection, because again, I think it's really important, especially in a neighborhood like ours up here in the mountains or in the desert, where we are unincorporated parts of San Bernardino County, and that is our only local government. So if you're joining from Redlands, the situation it's kind of interesting. When I talk to people in cities like Redlands and Highlands, a lot of people don't even know what a county supervisor is, and I can't even blame them, because if you're in a big city, you have a local city council, you have a mayor, and a lot of local city services, so you don't necessarily need to interface with the county on a direct basis. When you get out of cities, this is effectively our local government, and the challenge here is this district is really big. Talking about it's really varied. It's hard to physically be everywhere all the time, but we do have mediums like this where it's not necessarily as good as being together in person, but it's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing. Yeah. It's actually interesting. One of the questions we've had a couple times on the campaign, to your point about the county supervisor, is essentially, if you live in an unincorporated part of the county, they are your town mayor, right?
Yeah.
And so It's funny and frustrating that we've had some questions to the campaign from people saying, what made you think you could go from being, and I'm using air quotes here, just a resident, all the way to county supervisor? And the answer is, well, first of all, no one would question it if I was running for city council, right? That doesn't seem like as big of a leap, but that is essentially what this is for unincorporated residents. But also, the implication there is that you have to be plugged into the political machine of the county to even be considered viable as a representative of the people, which, if you follow politics, or even if you've just been awake for the past, decade, that a lot of the times we get into, problems and we have poor leadership by people who are only interested in being politicians. They're not interested in really helping people. So I personally don't like that question, because it implies that you have to be a politician to then keep being a politician. I don't know. That's how we end up in the mess we are. Anyway, so, we have more questions. So
yeah, okay, all right. Should we move on?
We should. So Amanda makes the point that a lot of STRs are corporate owned and they dismantle communities. Has displaced affordable housing to know people are purchasing ADUs specifically for STRs. Sorry, I'm
just
not sure.
Personally, the corporate owned ones are the ones I personally take an issue with, because they tend to be the ones that are not as responsibly managed. They're not members of the community. So we have friends who have a couple of rental properties, not just in this district, but also in the desert part of Riverside County, and they talk about how if they have any issues, they know their neighbors. They also spend time at the property as well. Like they're kind of the good ones, right? Because if you're neighbors with an STR property and you know the owner of that STR and you can just call them up and say, hey, your guest is causing a problem, usually there's a way to get that problem resolved really quickly. If it's a corporate owner that has a portfolio of 20, 50, 200 STRs, they're not going to have nearly the same level of care and attention, because then it's a corporate business. It's not a residential property being rented out by an owner. So those are the areas where I really want to start looking at restrictions on corporate ownership, because I think they tend to be the bigger problem properties here.
Amanda also makes the comment that consultants are a waste of money. I kind of agree with you on that one. Oftentimes that is the case.
Not always, but oftentimes that's the case. I've worked with many in my professional career. Some are incredible, but sometimes you don't get what you pay for.
Yeah. She says, I was a consultant for Gina Champion-Cain, who is in federal prison for the largest Ponzi scheme in San Diego County. Did I read about this one? Was she involved in property? Is it like?
Ooh, I don't know. You'll have to let us know. I don't know the details of this off the top of my head.
I think real estate, maybe. I feel like I read an article about her in a magazine once. Anyway, $400 million. She ruined people's reputations in so many industries. People need to be regulated, and their political affiliations need to be kept in check. I've always been a supporter of candidates like yourself that are grassroots and community-based. I mean, yeah, honestly, I mean, this also ties into a comment that Joan made about the max being, politicized. Let me find the comment so I can just get it. Yeah, mostly county chosen leaders, not really talking from the community. Absolutely, it does feel like. And again, I'm sure there are some good people on the max, and those people are trying to do what they're supposed to do. But it does feel, as a resident, it does kind of feel like the flow of information with Max is been reversed, right? It feels like they're kind of mouthpieces for the supervisor's office right now, when really they should be the voice of the people to the supervisor's office, not the other way around.
I think this should be the voice of the people, and I think we need for each MAC, I think we need a membership that's representative of the community. And I would even argue that we need some young people participating to the extent they want to in local government, because certainly the younger people I've talked to in the district, and if I just think about what your opportunities are as a young person once you graduate college here in San Bernardino County, you talk to a lot of people who say, I just got a job at Amazon because that's the only thing around and that's kind of the easiest thing to do. And for all the reasons we talked about before, I think that dynamic is going to change, and I think we need to start thinking about how do we provide a future for people here?
Yeah.
Because I've also talked to plenty of people who said, I moved out of San Bernardino County because I just didn't want to be here. I didn't see any opportunity. And I think it's a real problem for all of us, because unless we have a vibrant community here where young people want to stay and continue living here, what are the rest of us going to do?
Yeah, I mean, not that there would be anything wrong with this, but you don't want the whole of San Bernardino becoming a retirement home. You need young people to come in and start businesses. I mean, you and I are kind of in our 40s, and I'm running out of energy to do
we're gonna need someone to pay for our retirement.
No, that's not what I meant. But you know what I mean. It's just like, you need people to kind of pick up the baton and keep the community thriving and do all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So. And I think the positive thing here is there do seem to be green shoots across the district. So the city of Redlands actually seems to be like one of those places where they do have a lot going for them. A vibrant downtown, a lot of stuff going on. Of course, it's a university town as well. Yeah. So from that perspective, I think we can look to examples of even cities within the county that have done things pretty well.
Yeah.
But I think it's an important thing we got to think about.
Yeah. Amanda just dropped into the chat. Gina Champion had restaurants and beach rentals. Yeah, I can see.
Got it.
Lucrative, and I can see how she racked up $400 million in a Ponzi scheme. She also says exactly, I think this is in reference to corporate ownership of STRs. It also goes for rental properties. One of their corporately owned also honors. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but yes, the point is well made. Just that, corporate ownership of property has definitely become more of a problem over the last few years.
I think this is big picture going to be a real problem for the whole American economy, just corporate ownership of residential property, because it does seem like we're very much moving to a world where we're going to have a really consolidated group of property owners and the rest of the world isn't going to own property. And I don't think it takes a long time to figure out how it's going to be a problem for all of us. I really
just the ability of corporations like that to manipulate the prices. I mean, it's already bad enough. The housing market is nuts.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, we are coming up to 6 o'clock, and I know people have got evenings to get on with. Laurie asks, "Do you have yard signs?" Yes, Laurie, we do.
We do.
If you want to drop us a DM, I will also. I'm just going to type into the chat. info@smith4sb. Oh God.
And we will be in Redlands on Saturday morning canvassing. So if you drop us a line, we can connect and get you one while we're down in Redlands.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the pass between where we are and Big Bear, between Running Springs and Big Bear, is open yet. I did see a notification that it was closed, but I don't know if that's changed. But Redlands would be easy for us to drop something off. Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
I've also dropped an email address into the chat. If you want to drop us a line, if there's anything else you want to talk about, please. We respond to as many of those emails as we absolutely can. I'll be honest with everybody, as the campaign picks up momentum and we get the attention of more and more people as we approach the election, we are getting a lot more messages. So, but just know that we do really, really, really try to respond to all of them. We do try to respond to all of them. So if we don't get back to you immediately, don't panic. You are in the list. And if we don't respond to your email, but you do have a chance to come to another town hall or see us at an in-person event, just come and grab us and say, "Hey, I sent you an email. I want to talk about this." Totally fine.
100%. We want to be as available as we possibly can be. That's why we're doing all these town halls. Yeah. And by the way, please feel free to join absolutely any of them. We do have them kind of targeted around different geographies of the district, just because the The needs of residents across District 3 are so unique,
Yep.
but everyone's welcome to join all of them. And we've had a couple really, really fun and interesting ones where we've had people from Redlands and people from Needles on at the same time.
We made a typo in a text message last week. We told them both to be there at 6 p.m. and everybody showed up, but it was one of our best sessions.
It was really fun.
It was really great.
I think it's important for all of us as residents of District 3 to realize that there are people in really different situations to us.
Yeah.
Because this place is really, really big.
Yeah.
It's really weird running for a county seat, one district of a county that is much bigger than a lot of state senate or assembly races. It's really huge.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy place.
Just for anyone who's eagle-eyed and has looked at our schedule of town halls, we are coming to the end of the current batch of town halls that we had planned. However, they are not going to end there. We are going to keep doing them until the election on March 5th. But I think what we're going to do now that we've had a chance to talk to each community separately, I think what we're going to do going forward is just have the town halls be open to everybody.
Agreed.
So we will pick a time. We'll probably do, maybe 2 a week. 6 p.m. seems to be the preferred time, 6 p.m. in the evening, just because it gives people time to get home from work. So we'll probably, and I'll confirm this when we put the flyers out and stuff. We'll probably do sessions from 6 to 7 p.m. just open to everybody on, maybe Tuesdays and Wednesdays. But keep an eye out for that if you want to join another one.
Indeed. So just I'll put up the last slide here, which is sorry. Do we have any final questions before we wrap up?
We do, but just
Okay.
give the blurb about this slide, and so people can read it while we answer the question.
Oh yeah, okay. So if you haven't visited the website yet, please check it out. It's smith4sb.com. We've got a whole library of issues. You'll see all the videos we put together, deep diving on issues across the district. So there's plenty of information there. Same kind of things on social media, whatever social media platform you're on, we're Smith4SB. And I've always got to make the plug because this is a totally grassroots funded campaign. We're not taking any corporate money. We're not taking any money from sitting politicians, and we're not taking any property development money. So if you're at all interested in the campaign, please help support us. We're great at making the most of all of our donations.
Oh yeah.
We do a lot in terms of digital outreach as well. But we've got now just under 4 weeks to go until the primary March 5th. If you're already registered to vote and you've got a ballot sitting in your mailbox, please just vote early, because depending on where you are, if you're somewhere like us, you might be able to even get to the polling place on election day.
Yeah, and we just have to drop this into conversation in case anyone checks. You will see Graham's name on the ballot. You will not see a candidate statement from Graham in the voter information guide. That was a choice that we made as a campaign because the county charges $17,000 to put a 200-word statement in the voter information guide, which we saw some statistics on it, and not very many people read the voter information guide. So 200 words for $17,000 did not seem like a good trade. We have used that money and spent it on things like lawn signs, which, Joan, if you would like a lawn sign, she lives in Crestline. A drop-off place is a great idea, actually. We hadn't thought about that. So why don't you give us some time just to figure that out and see if we can find a drop-off place. Otherwise, I recognize you from Facebook and comments and stuff, so I will drop you a message once we figure that out and let you know where you can pick up a lawn sign.
Perfect.
Yeah. There is a really great question. We are running out of time because we do have to run for a thing at 6:15, but Amanda did point out, Amanda, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I do want to pick up one thing here, which is maybe I should run for the seat next to you. We have a lot to say about the process of running for office, and
we do.
Do you want to give a 10-second answer to this?
I will start talking a lot more publicly about this on social media and on the website, because as a first-time candidate, I've learned so much about this process, and I have a much greater appreciation now for why we wind up with some of the candidates that we do just across the board nationally.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm alone in the view that we could probably find better presidential candidates on both parties. I think we can find better candidates locally.
Yeah.
It's really hard to run for office, even locally here in the county.
And just to be clear, we are not making a distinction here between Republicans, Democrats, or anything. This has nothing to do with party affiliation.
If anything, the thing I talk about a lot is career politician versus not. I think career politicians on all sides are really screwing things up for everybody. And if elected to this seat, I want to do my part to try to make it easier for people to run. Because just even going through the admin of getting yourself on the ballot, I mean, it's a really expensive process as well.
Well, we just mentioned $17,000.
$17,000 for a candidate statement. I actually think it's a little bit criminal that it's branded as a voter information guide when really it's candidate marketing materials that you have to pay for. So we've learned so much through this process. I'm really happy and excited to be doing it. But it is a real undertaking, and certainly it does count on donations from individuals like you, particularly if you're running a grassroots campaign like we are. But I really encourage other people to do it. And if you spend time really peeling back the layers of the onion on the county, what you'll find is so many people are not elected to these positions. So I think most people know that Don Rao, who I'm running against, was appointed in 2018 and then since has had the advantage of incumbency. This is a really typical feature across the board here. I think in District 1, currently run by Paul Cook, I think, I'm being told to cut off my thoughts here. I won't say this on record or publicly, but I think we're going to see more of this going forward, and I think we need to do our part to make sure that we're having more candidates put themselves forward, have free and fair elections here, and make sure that this county is actually represented by people who really want to step up and do the right thing.
Yeah, we really need to make the barriers, get rid of some of those barriers, because there are a lot of qualified, good people who want to represent and do good things that are completely put off by the process. So, Amanda, I know you were joking, but if you ever decide that you want to run for something, please drop us an email, because we have a lot of advice for you.
We have a lot to say, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Okay. On that note, seems like a good... It's on the note of saving democracy. Probably a good time to stop.
Well, look, if you have any follow-up questions, you know where to reach us. Our email address is on the website. We respond to comments and direct messages on all the social media platforms. So please do reach out. And like Mark said, we have more sessions scheduled. We will add more to the schedule once we get through next week and keep doing these right up until the primary. And really the most helpful thing that you can do is tell your friends and family. If everyone who joined tonight texts 5 or 10 people and just say, hey, check out this website. A lot of people don't even know there's an election happening right now.
Yeah.
And just my last plug on that is the primary here is really important, because if Supervisor Rao gets 50% in the primary, then this election is over. It doesn't even go to November.
Yeah.
So please get out and vote. Make sure your friends and family register to vote if they're not already. You've got till February 20th to do it, to vote in the primary. And if you've got a ballot sitting in your mailbox, go fill it in and mail it back.
Yeah, because you might not get a chance to vote in person if this weather keeps up, which hopefully it won't, but never a bad idea. Okay, cool. All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks, everyone. We will talk to you soon. Take care.
Have a good night.